I've always believed that global success can be achieved from any pocket of the world. Being here in rural Cape Breton throughout the pandemic has proven this, not just for myself, but for entrepreneurs everywhere who've adapted and found opportunities in spite of significant challenges. So many people have inspired me throughout my career and continue to every day, from small business owners to international leaders. People across our country are taking risks and betting on themselves in pursuit of their passions. I'm launching these platforms to spark conversations about what it takes to succeed in business and life. If you want to stay connected and inspired, follow along. Today, I'm going to be speaking with one of our country's leaders in the arts sector, Wesley Colford. They have an impressive resume that brought them to Toronto, but they returned back home to Cape Breton after 6 years ago to bring their talents to a local stage. A playwright, actor, singer, dancer, and more. Wesley is the artistic director at the Highland Arts Theatre, also known as the Hat. Wesley transformed the 1900-year-old St. Andrew's United Church into a breathtaking theatre in downtown Sydney, Cape Breton. It showcases the talents of many emerging and seasoned performers. They host their own shows and invite performers from all around the world to grace the stage. When the world started to shut down, the theatre world was very much affected. Wesley and their team did the unimaginable. They launched a radical access campaign during the pandemic to become the first community-funded theatre in Canada, and they achieved it. Audience members get to watch any main stage show for free because of the community support. Wesley has brought so much life into Cape Breton during such a hard time for many. I am looking forward to sharing their story and shining some light on the arts industry. Hey, Wesley, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good. Good to be here on stage. I never get on the stage.
It's your big debut.
It's my big debut. Isn't that fun? So good to be here in the Hat, the Highland Arts Theatre, this beautiful theatre that you built, and it has such a history, and it's so cool to be able to chat with you about how this all happened and your time, how you brought up in Cape Breton, and it's so cool for me to be here and spend some time with you today.
Well, we're so lucky to have you, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, what fun. So let's begin. Growing up here, right? You grew up here and spent most of your life here.
Yeah.
You went away, but you came back, like many of us do.
As we do, yes.
But tell us a little bit about your history.
Sure.
Tell us, how you got interested in art at a very young age, I think.
Yeah. So like you said, I grew up in Sydney, and my mom was a music teacher, and then would start doing the big musical productions at the various schools that she taught at. So one of my earliest memories is her, playing and music directing and directing a show she had written, and I'd be clinging to her leg at the piano in front of an audience. So I got exposed very early, from probably like age 3 or 4, I imagine. Yeah. And had this amazing role model of someone who just would write the show, would direct the show, would produce it, would make it all happen with these big casts of children.
So you saw it all very early.
Yeah, I got kind of hooked, and then I was in dance classes when I was as early as 4. I certainly was a very musical household from birth, and I think it was around that time that I also then was exposed to the movie Singing in the Rain, which just became my favorite thing and such an inspiration, and seeing all these things I loved, being done at a very high level, and then all of those old movie musicals from MGM. Yes. I was transported, and it became.
How old were you then?
I was either 4 or 5. It was pretty young.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty young, and I just got hooked, as people do. So.
And there's a lot of time to sing in the rain in Cape Breton.
Oh yes, well it's at least 10 out of 12 months. There's a article in the newspaper because I started bringing an umbrella everywhere I went, just in case there's an opportunity to sing. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and a reporter happened to see me and took this picture that ended up on the front page of the Post. So I had these little, very light indulgences with attention that I think took root, I suspect.
Yes, right. Because you're humble, but you like that. That was sort of fun for you, wasn't it?
Yeah,
As a child,
Oh,
particularly.
sure. Yeah, I like to. I hope I can find the balance of all of those things, but. There's especially when you're that age,
Yep.
you get sucked into the excitement of it all,
Yep.
absolutely. And then as I grew up, it was always part of my life. I think I took it for granted to an extent, and I had relatives in Ontario that were involved in music and theater, and I had just the tiniest insight to that world that I was perhaps brazen enough or naive enough, at least, to think that I could maybe have a go at it. So
For you.
I really. I really set my heart in that
Because it
passion.
wasn't something guidance counselors would give you a lot of
Oh no!
advice
Oh
on.
no! If anything, they would steer you in the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
And I had a lot of opportunities. I appreciate you saying I'm humble, and I try to be, but I am going to try to be candid also for the sake of this.
Yeah.
And I skipped 2 grades when I was younger. I graduated when I was 16 from Sydney Academy, top of my class. High marks in calculus and economics and history and English, and as well as drama and art and everything else.
Yeah.
So I could have done anything, I
Yeah.
think. I think all of us could have done anything ultimately, actually, but I had options, and a lot of people, as you say, tried to get me to go into medicine
Yes.
or into
Yeah.
math or economics or anything like that. But I always really knew this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
The challenge was, and I have such early memories of this, at the time and historically for decades, there was really no way to have a career in theater in Cape Breton with any hope of getting paid.
Yeah.
Unless you were incredibly self-motivated and rigorous and
Or went away a lot.
or went away a lot. Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
there's, like other than self-producing, and there's
Yeah.
some great examples of that, but there's really no institution in Cape Breton that you could really stand a chance getting hired as an actor or in the theater. So.
Yeah. And did you start to develop that at graduation time? Did you start to think about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, even when I was an early teenager, we were starting to do some, very, very low level, amateur productions, but we would produce our own things. Like all of our friends, we'd have really great groups, and there was a really supportive community theater, absolutely, and so much talent. So
Yes.
that's the benefit Cape Breton had,
Yeah.
and growing up in that environment. Where everybody in the Cape Breton can sing. Every second person can play
Yes.
the fiddle.
Yes.
It's a hugely
It's a
culturally
kitchen party.
rich- It
Just
is.
one
No,
big kitchen
It's
party.
just
Yeah.
it's something people assume. I think that's
Yeah.
where the humility comes from, where we
Yeah.
all just have been brought up in this environment. And so I had amazing opportunities to explore and try things and just learn those early skills. But again, throughout all that, I knew if this is how I was going to make my living, if I had any chance of just paying rent,
Yeah.
I was going to have to go away. So
Yeah.
that was really, before I was 10, I had that idea.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I was 16, I graduated, I moved to Ontario.
Yeah.
I was very lucky to have a fantastic education in musical theater originally at Sheridan College. Then I
Okay.
went to George Brown Theatre School for classical acting, because I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yes.
I couldn't get enough. And then I thought that was going to be my life in Toronto, and I was very lucky.
You were
had
at the Tarragon, weren't you?
Yes, that's right. So
Yeah.
I was one of the
I
box
probably
office
saw you
managers.
there.
I
Yeah.
suspect we did, and
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that because
Yeah.
I spent so much time
Yeah.
there and
It's
learned
great
so
theater.
much. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, it's
Yeah.
just wonderful, and
Yeah.
the playwrights and the artists and the actors that come through the doors, like I've gotten to meet so many of my heroes,
Yeah.
and then even more importantly to see
Them come
all the
here.
behind the scenes. Well, that's oh my gosh, yeah,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
a dream come true.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. We had Daniel McIver do a one-man show this summer,
Yeah.
which only could have happened because of
The
COVID.
pandemic,
And
yeah.
and just like,
Wow.
what he's someone, again, from Cape Breton who's internationally renowned and one of my heroes, as long as that. And to be able to host him and have him on a stage that
Like
we've all
this?
worked so hard to build. It's
So how
amazing.
long at the Tarragon?
I think it was 3 years after I graduated,
Yeah.
and throughout that I was writing, I was auditioning, I was producing indie
Yep.
theater, whatever I could do, and again just learning. And then in 2014, I became aware that this Highland Arts Theatre project was beginning, and I will always completely credit my father. Actually,
Yes.
was the one who had the inspiration, he had the vision, he made it all happen in those early days. And perhaps
And
similar.
were you and he were talking about this?
Yeah, I knew, I think like I'd come home for Christmas,
Okay.
and I was aware this was a possibility, and perhaps similar to my early guidance counselors, I thought it was the worst idea. I could not imagine a worse investment, and investment of time, investment of resources. And you know, I was supportive but skeptical for sure. And my dad has huge ideas. I mean, he's someone who gets very enchanted with you know, I think a lot of romance of the business side of things, and I've great respect for that. But I've also seen, and I've been sucked into a lot of projects that I haven't always felt were totally executed. And something like this, just again, I had been indoctrinated this my whole life. I just was convinced there was no way a performing theater in the context that I was aspiring to, at least, I did not think could work. I didn't think the audience would be here. I didn't think people would be interested. Obviously, there were theaters like the Savoy and the Boardmore.
Do you think they wanted you back?
I think there was probably
a little bit of that?
I suspect so.
Yeah.
I suspect so. And I mean, I can never quite tell how much of it was a shrewd plan or how much of it was incidental. And I don't want to put myself in the center of it. But I never expected to be back. Like even at that point. After this was all being built and renovated and the seats are coming in, I was still watching from afar.
Yeah.
And then I was asked to come and direct the first show that would happen here, which was called The Kowski Brothers, which is a musical I'd written.
But was that here physically? No.
Well, we hadn't done it here.
No.
I mean, oh my gosh, it's so long now.
Yeah.
I think I wrote it in 2010 originally, and we did it in Ontario. It was a big hit at the Fringe Festival in Toronto.
Yes.
It was then picked up professionally and happened around Ontario, which was wonderful. So I wasn't directing at that point. I was just the writer and producing some of them.
Yeah. Just the writer, just the producer. Oh,
Well, compared to now where I do everything and sweep up afterwards sometimes. But no, but
And make the popcorn.
And well, not anymore. I've been replaced, and thank God, because I don't use enough salt, I think. But no, but I was in that world of this show. So and it was about Cape Breton vaudeville in the 1920s and 30s, and this sort of fictional account of these brothers based on real, you know, history of the Vogue Theatre and the Lyceum Theatre and all this great theatre tradition from 100 years ago. So it actually made perfect sense as the inaugural show of this brand new performing arts space. So so that was exciting. Part of what drew me as well, I mean, I always wanted to come back. Like I always had that idea, and I had throughout the summers, or you know, there were little, you know, very very small scale indie pop-ups that would come, and I again got so much experience working with those people. But I thought I'd come. I'll do this one show. It'll be a month. It'll be great to be in Cape Breton in June. It'll snow every day, and then I go back to Toronto and continue my so-called career, and that was great. And you know, maybe once a year I can come back. And as soon as I stepped foot here, the energy in the room, the electricity of even without an audience, and then eventually when an audience came, it just was so unique and special. And there was a need for this kind of work in a way that in Toronto, as exciting as Toronto is, and I love Toronto, and I loved working in all the capacities I did, but
it has more theaters.
Well, it has more theaters. There's, you know, every one of my friends had a barbershop theater front that they could do plays in a couple times a year.
Do you know that Toronto has the third most theaters in the world?
Really?
London, New York, Toronto.
That doesn't shock me. And it's fabulous. And again, I mean, I was seeing 150, 200 plays a year. Like the exposure I had and the education.
Unbelievable.
Couldn't top it. No, I'm so lucky and grateful.
So when did you come here permanently?
Well, it was kind of then. It was 2014. We did the first show.
Yeah.
And I think I went back for like a month, and then we did the same show again at the end of the summer. So I came back for that, and then I might have gone back and forth for a couple of months. But I basically at that point said, okay, there's something here. There's not just a beautiful facility and beautiful potential, but more than that, there's an audience that's hungry and they want to be engaged.
So Wesley, was that the first time we connected? Was it around 2014?
It might have been slightly later, but it was that area probably, because we were still. I mean, this is the thing. We had no government funding.
No.
This was all this sort of harebrained idea of my father's and others that had supported him in the community. We became a non-for-profit, and there was a board of directors, but it was very haphazard, and we were really just, for years, honestly, we like to say we jumped out of the plane and then had to invent a parachute. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that, you know, and I actually love that, and I think I probably thrive in that. So that's
yes, you do.
That's why it's worked.
Yes.
And similar thing happened with the pandemic, which we can talk about later. But it's thrilling, and it does. I mean, growing up, I think there was a different attitude in Cape Breton, and I don't know if you experienced this at all, but there, you know, I remember from a young age, just this sort of leftover, depressive or you know, or apathetic attitude
because of the history.
Well, because of the history, and people have been shot down, and the steel plant closed, and coal mines. Exactly. Like there's just this really. You know, almost futile environment that people.
But there's so much potential.
Absolutely.
To lift that out.
Absolutely, and that's how in the last 20 years. Like as soon as honestly, just walking down the street when I came back in 2014, I could feel the difference, and it's only exploded since then. It's just unbelievable.
I feel the same thing. You know what? I think this place has more potential. I'm almost afraid of telling too many people about how good it is.
It's like the best kept secret. We don't want to be overblown.
But it's special.
But
and it's a demanding audience too. It is it is not an easy group, huh?
No, I wouldn't say that.
But the rewards are enormous.
Well, that's what makes it worth it, I think.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
If it was too easy, it wouldn't be fun.
Right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's
no,
right.
but it's. I mean, people. You mentioned humility, and I hope I have that. But I think the community has that, and
yes,
there's such it's a hard work. I mean, I didn't know this until I wrote a whole musical about it. But during World War II. Cape Breton was responsible for more than half of Canada's steel for everything in World War II.
All the whole railway was built by
absolutely. And at that point, it was mostly women who'd stepped in to take over for the men that went to war. So like there's all these, you know, hardworking, you know, every class, but you know, the people that just make it happen.
You know, I worked in the coal mines when I started here, Wesley,
that's amazing.
when I was 20 years old.
Wow.
And and the women that were married to these miners that. Oh my God, they did everything. They ran their households. They ran their communities. They ran their churches. The men went down underground and they were exhausted, right? So they didn't have the energy. They got the money in.
Of course.
These women, and they produced all these amazing children. And the potential here, islanders are independent. They live on an island. They can't go to get stuff fixed.
You have to be self-sufficient.
You have to be self-sufficient.
And if you want something, you have to make it happen yourself. You have to do it.
And there's no place, I think, per capita in the world that has more entertainment and arts culture than this island.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that's the thing. That's one of the reasons I knew this was possible, because while there hadn't been a professional theater in this context for a long time, you know, musicians, there's 1,000 that are, you know, at least a dozen world-class, world-famous, you know, the Rankins, Ashley Mackay, like there's so many.
Absolutely. Rita McNeil.
I mean, 3 of the top 10 playwrights in Canada also are from Cape Breton. None of them work here, but they're like, there's just this, I don't know what it is. There's something about that spirit, that creativity, I don't know, but it's vibrant. It
is. But you know, you've built more than a theater.
Well, I'll try.
Tell us about your Hatch program.
Oh, sure.
This is something that you've done for. You've built the supply chain of actors here.
Well,
tell us about that.
So one of our big I mean, when I started, more than just coming for my own excitement or whatever, I knew if we wanted to build a sustainable professional theater here, I didn't want it to be a theater where we're bringing in people every week. We're not. We couldn't afford to do that. But I wanted this to be Cape Breton's theater. I wanted to be able to take all of the incredible talent that was here, channel it, give it a home, bring people together in different combinations, and give them that collaborative experience. But then I was also thinking long term, and very early on, we recognized that not just are there incredible adults who'd been doing various things and amazing talents and experiences, but there's just these brilliant children, and I think in a lot of ways children are sometimes more talented than the adults because they don't have any of the baggage that we get over our lives, right? So they're just so genuine, they're so pure. Yeah, exactly, absolutely. Yeah. And that's also so inspiring for me and for everyone else, I think. So from the Christmas Carol was our 3rd production. It was a huge hit, and it was like a 40-person community production. Ages, probably 5 or 6, all the way to like 70 or 80. Yeah. And so we started to get to know some of these young performers, and as we did auditions, there was just more and more and more, and very rarely in our main season would there be a lot of roles. So we figured this is an opportunity, if we want this to be something not just for 5 years, but for 50 years, let's start now. Let's
Yeah.
get the training that, everything that I had received or didn't receive and wanted to receive. Let's create these kinds of programs.
How do you do it? Tell me how it works.
It's so funny because I honestly believe the kids bring so much themselves. Like some of the time, especially when directing productions, it's more about getting out of their way
Yeah.
and letting them just be brilliant and
Yeah.
giving them permission to be as creative and inspiring as they are. But that, logistically, it wasn't hard just because there's so many that were interested.
Yeah.
And
what, did they come to a place here? Tell me how
oh,
it
sure.
works.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So I mean, it's changed over the years. We
Yeah.
started in 2016. I guess we had what we called the Hat Resident Company. So it was essentially a summer camp.
Yep.
It was a couple of times a week, probably over the summer. And they did a big showcase performance at the end. So it was a bit of singing, a bit of dancing, a bit of acting. And really, we were just testing the waters. Over the years, we've been so fortunate to be able to grow that program. Hatch was the next iteration, so that was, again, a more intensive summer program. And now we have the Hat Academy, so we have classes year-round. We have, again, ages 5 to 105.
I see them outside.
That's right, yeah.
Sometimes lined up. Like,
Yeah, well,
they're so excited. They're dressed
especially
up.
now. Yeah,
Yes.
everyone's socially distanced in the parking lot.
yes.
It's like, oh god, and then raining probably.
Yes,
but,
it was raining last time I saw them.
Yeah, but it's just so sweet, and they're so good. I mean, anytime I'm run down, anytime I'm exhausted, which is often, I admit. But I just, I walk into a classroom where I see them lined up like that, and it just gives me so much joy.
Isn't that great?
We've been so. I mean, in the past few years, I've gotten to direct Seussical the musical and Matilda the musical, and we just finished Frozen Junior.
Yeah.
And
I love that your audiences are children. I love that your productions are children, and I love that you're providing that to the whole community.
Well, and that's the thing, because I really, I mean, this goes to my core belief about what theater is, and it needs to be about a community. As much as, I mean, we want to provide a professional experience with trained and people that are operating at a very high level, but it's got to include everyone, or else what's the point? Because if I want to watch a really good story, I have all of the history of TV and movies, film, I can see on my phone at any time.
Yeah.
So why would I pay more money to come out into a public place, to leave my home, to put on nicer clothes, be exhausted? What's the point unless it's a unique experience that speaks specifically to me and my community? And that's what we've worked to provide.
What a value add you provide.
I hope so.
So I want to talk about what you did during the pandemic.
Sure,
I think this is a great story,
Sure.
the radical access story. But before we do, tell me what your biggest production successes have been so far for the broader community and for children. And I know that they're all unique, but I want the audience to hear the types of things you do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a great question. I mean, we've done, I think, so it's less than 7 years we've existed, and I think we're up to 85 main stage productions, not including everything, all the ancillary programming. So we do a lot. Quite a bit is original Cape Breton developed new works. So we have wonderful playwrights that we work with and different development programs. Those world premieres are a big part of what I love the most and I'm excited about. But as well, like I said, there's so many great playwrights from Cape Breton who are world famous or nationally famous, and their plays had never been done here. Like the Glace Bay Miners Museum had never been produced professionally in Cape Breton with the Cape Breton cast, and that's. Like, these stories that we know of or we think we know of that everybody in theater school in Toronto knows about, we'd never gotten to experience ourselves. So there's those sorts of things. I'm also thrilled to take the plays that I love from Canadian playwrights across the country and bring them here to get to show them to people for the first time. And then, a couple of times a season we'll do usually more obscure, but a Broadway musical or review. We've done The Drowsy Chaperone. We've done, like I said, Matilda, Seussical. Like there's great work out there, but I try to make sure it's all intentional. So there's a reason it's relevant to this community at this moment. Maybe it ties into the rest of the season in a thematic way, but it's a wide range. I mean, we do so much. And again, because a lot of nobody was going to do a Hannah Moscovich play or Daniel McIver play prior to us. So the fact that we can introduce people to these kinds of theater, these genres that they might not have ever thought of, is so exciting. And to build that, the audience education as much as enjoyment. That's really exciting.
So 2019, you were sold out all the time. Total.
It was the crest of our wave.
About a year ago, or a little bit more than a year ago, this little pandemic happened. And it hit the hardest in the entertainment and arts communities. And but boy, you decided you were going to lean into this one. So
Yep.
tell us about what you decided to do,
Yeah,
and
sure.
give us a story.
Sure. So, I mean, like all theaters, it was so fast. I knew about the virus happening elsewhere in the world. It was on my radar, but I had no idea it was going to hit like it did, and I don't think many of us did. And we were in the middle of the biggest run of the season. It was completely sold out. We had another week and a half of sold out, 400 people a night.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Friday or Saturday, we found out we had to shut down.
Yeah.
And at that point, we thought it was 2 weeks, and we rescheduled, and we all kind of thought, great, we'll get a little extended weekend. And then it was much more extended than we thought.
That's right.
And a lot more wine was drunk, and
Yes.
a lot more bad habits crept in.
But creative thinking
Well,
was done
creative
too.
thinking, and I think that's the gift, was the time and the pressure, which is something that I certainly thrive in. Where, I mean, to give you a bit of context, so it's 2019. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a community of about 100,000.
Yeah.
We had 37,000 people through the door in 2019.
Wow.
So it's a huge, huge demographic.
Wow.
We were a $1.2 million company at that point.
Yeah.
Again, in less than, I mean, it was about 6 years at that point. Nights of programming, more than half of the year we were live and acts. Things were happening downtown. It was incredible. About 200 nights a year probably, and then we were just shut.
Yeah.
And in the first month, we refunded over $200,000 of tickets. No hope in sight. I mean, at that point, we thought we won't be able to have a live audience for years. If not decades. Like,
Yeah.
who knows? And the grim reality was we had no operating funding, we had no government grants to rely on.
You had bills to pay.
We had bills to pay, and 80% of those historically had been paid with tickets, which we
Yep.
could not do.
Yep.
And especially at that point, nobody was thinking about paying for streaming service, because you pay $10, $15 a month for Netflix. Why would you pay $20 for one performance?
Yeah.
Plus everyone was doing it for free, which I really approved. I thought that
Yeah.
was really wonderful that the arts community stepped in, especially Nova Scotia, to just
Great.
create content and share it, and that was such a gift. So we ran the numbers and had a lot of emergency board meetings, and this was March and then April, and based on our bank account and based on the 100-year-old building that we were still paying for heat for, we would be bankrupt before the end of August.
Yeah.
And after all of the work that so many of us had put into,
Yes.
that just was unconscionable.
Devastating. Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I knew we couldn't allow that to happen. I didn't know what we would do, but I don't like to be bored. So in extreme isolation quarantine period, I just everything I could read, everything that was happening anywhere in the world, I was sucking in, and more than that, everything I'd always wanted to do, because what I don't think everyone in the public necessarily realizes is the pandemic exacerbated all of the problems of the theater, for sure, in an extreme way. But I think we're a rare exception where theaters across the world over the last several decades have been in decline. It's
Yes.
not been
No.
a rosy atmosphere. And again, that's one of the reasons I've stayed and been so fortunate.
But this was sort of sudden and
well, yeah, it was an
devastating.
extreme, yeah, it was a nosedive.
Yeah.
But again,
and you had to build your parachute.
We had to build the parachute again. Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly. And so taking all of those things I'd been thinking about, again, for 10 years probably, even in Toronto, of how do we change this experience so that people want to go to the theater. It's not something that your grandparents take you to and it's sort of like eating vegetables. It's, it should be electric. It should be something that people look forward to. And here it had been.
Yeah.
But I knew there was just all these things that I'd always wanted to do. And so this is a long development, obviously, but we were so fortunate being in Cape Breton around, I think it was June. We started getting indications that sooner than later we would be allowed to have audiences.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't be 400 people, but some amount of people. I think 50 was sort of the first wave, which we expected. And I was thrilled, because I would stand up here for free and do something if it meant I could engage and create activity and get people in the building. But I knew unless we started charging $1,000 a ticket, that if 50 people a night was not going to pay the bills, nor pay for any amount of production or actors or anything that we need to do. So I started thinking about what are the things that are possible, and then what are the things that are necessary, and how do we marry those two? And I'd always loved the idea of theater being free. I think, as it started in ancient Greece, it was an entire community came, and there's a festival, and everybody had wine, and just it was a major party. And that's a big part of what I think theater sometimes misses. So if I mean, since we started, that was one of our priorities. How do we make sure it's not just, you know, the creme de la creme that come to the audience, but I want to make sure everybody can afford to come. There's an option for everybody, and that's how we built an audience with the population, you know, pretty small, and yet we've gotten such a large corner of it because we're bringing everyone in. So philosophically, that was always important to me. In this dire time of the pandemic, so many people out of work, it was even more important. And then there was the reality that, you know, we could charge every night. Will anyone even feel comfortable coming in the building because of what we've all experienced? And then will anyone be able to afford it? And if they can, will it make a difference? And none of those things equated. Thus, Radical Access was born. So I could talk about this for days, but I'll try to be concise. The core of it is, I mean, it borrows from so many models that exist in other forums, like crowdsourcing or crowdfunding, or, you know, subscription-based or Patreons, whatever. Like there's a lot of precedent that I've drawn from, but the idea being, we set out a list of all the things we'd always wanted to do if we'd had magical funding that we could afford to produce all these things. And they included things like commissioning a new play from BIPOC Canadian playwrights, creating more Mi'kmaq content, scholarships for our HAT Academy program, all kinds, you know, ASL interpretations, live streaming, like all the stuff that we wanted to do anyway. It was particularly poignant during the pandemic and helped access people that maybe even when we were legally allowed to be in public, they still weren't comfortable, or they had health conditions or anything like that. But then the core of it was, if we could solicit $50,000 a month in donations, or the one-time equivalent, we would then have all 12 main stage productions free of charge for everyone. So the donors get tax receipts. They're not getting any special perks themselves, other than they get to enjoy the same thing everybody else is enjoying. And as well, all these other things that were part of the program got to happen as well. So it meant that we had a sustainable revenue that could actually help to pay for the building expenses, which we'd never had. And then we had an actual budget for the productions and the artists and everything that we needed to do to make all those perks and benefits happen. So that was wild. It took not too long, but a little bit to convince our board of directors. Most of them were very, very enthusiastic, and those that weren't were still so supportive and have completely come around. But we really didn't know what to expect, because that is a lot. I mean, even when we announced it, when we said we needed $50,000 a month, I don't think anyone realized that was only half of our budget. Like we were, like I said, $1.2 million company. We spent over $100,000 a month. But that was the bare minimum we needed to survive, to have some level of programming. And realistically, I thought it was possible because we had about 1,500 subscribers at that point. If we could convince all of them to donate $25 a month, which is what they were basically paying already, without a tax receipt, so there was, the precedent was there, that was 75% of the goal. And so I knew we could probably get the rest. And it's funny because our subscribers, in some cases, were actually the people that took the longest to convince, because they were already here. They had a way of doing things, and I understand that. Hopefully, as you know, we're a year into it at this point, I hope that they have come around to the people that were doubting. But what it means is nobody loses anything. Everybody that was already coming gets to come. They're paying probably less than they paid before. They're getting some of it back in their taxes anyway. And then aside from just the shows themselves, they're doing all these other things. Well, it makes a lot of sense. And it's something I hope will catch on. I hope other theaters adopt it. And I know even, when it was announced, we got a lot of attention. We were in the Globe and Mail several times.
Yes, I know.
The New York Times.
It was very
amazing.
unique. Is it the first time that someone tried to do something like this?
It's not the first. It's, I think, the first in Canada, or at least the first I'm aware of. And the scale, certainly. I mean, there's obviously there's productions that have happened that were free or versions of that. But to do 12 main stage shows in a year is pretty ambitious. We took inspiration from some small theaters in the States, for sure, and tried to build on what they've tried.
Tell me about, I think that this story has really resonated, I think, with Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Canada, and beyond. And, you know, you're a real example of profit and purpose. And you know, when you really hit the wall and you came up with a brilliant idea. And this place will be sustained because of the creativity and innovation and team you have around you, because I know how much you depend upon them. And tell us about how many people are involved in you know, how many, like, these people that are on stage, like how do they get paid? They get paid through, you know, so how many people are on your payroll, like in a typical, like before the pandemic?
Well, right now, post-pandemic, we have more people than we've ever had. And that's, I mean, partially because there's been, thankfully, some really fantastic support from the federal government.
Yep.
But just to give you context, like until in 2018, the beginning of 2018,
Yep.
We had one staff member on payroll, and it was not me.
Yeah.
I, for the first 5 years, was operating completely as a volunteer, doing other side gigs and other whatever. But we had a box office manager, and then everyone else, like the artists, got paid, but you know, like honorariums or like, you know, it's still something that we're always going to be building.
Yeah.
But we had one actual staff member, and the rest of it was done by myself, a couple other people that were just working 12 jobs each.
Yeah.
And thankfully, at that point, we started hiring. So I think before the pandemic, I think we had 5 full-time staff, which I was included in at that point.
Yep.
Now we have 11.
Yeah. Wow.
And probably another 10 to 15 part-time that are like regular part-time.
Yeah.
And then dozens of artists and designers, directors, people that come in
Yep.
for, you know, seasonal work or periods of work during a show.
Yeah. And really important to have seasonal work. And
Oh, absolutely.
This is really critical.
Yeah,
You know, the value
absolutely.
that you add to the community is enormous. Right?
Well, it's I mean, like I've been saying, so in 2019, we had, it was a $1.2 million budget, 700,000 went to local artists.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's a huge thing.
Huge
Like,
amount of
again,
money.
As
Yeah.
someone growing up, never thought I could get paid even $100 to do a show.
Yeah.
To be able to put that back in, first of all, as an investment to our arts community, but also then like all of the spin-off in the community from an economic perspective, it's incredible because everyone's then spending that again and it's multiplying and all these things that, this is why we have
So
local
cool.
economies, but it's
So cool.
it's pretty incredible.
5 years from now,
Yeah.
hopefully this pandemic settles down.
I hope so. Oh, God.
I'm just glad you're not in Ontario.
I'm glad
Me
none
at
of
the
us
moment
are.
too,
Yeah,
obviously.
we're so lucky,
I'm sure that Ontario will get better. But,
Absolutely,
but
no,
look,
absolutely.
it's such interesting times.
Yeah.
5 years time. Tell
Yeah.
me what will the hat be? What do you see? What do you envision?
I mean, what Radical Access in this moment in time has really provided is this revelation that what we're doing, and while we've always known how special it was within Cape Breton, it's caught national attention, it's caught international attention.
Yeah.
And with Radical Access, probably a quarter of our donors don't live in Cape Breton and maybe never have been in Cape Breton.
Yeah.
And it is the
Amazing.
story that's just taken off, and people have believed in it, and people like yourself for that matter, and we're so appreciative of that. But my hope is once people can travel safely again,
Yes.
Those people who've been now contributing, you know, even $5 a month or $20 a month, they'll have a relationship with us. They'll have watched our content online, maybe perhaps, and then they'll say, "Oh, I'm going on vacation. I'm going to go to Cape Breton.
Yeah.
Let's check out the hat."
Yeah.
And I think that's something that had been happening already. I mean, we have people from the States that every summer they'll come to Cape Breton. They'll see all of our shows in 1 week, and then they'll go to the Cabot Trail, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
I hope that continues, and realistically. There's no reason that this can't be a world-class destination because of theater, as much as because of any of the rest of the beauties of Cape Breton.
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at Charlottetown. There's an incredible theater festival.
Exactly.
It's been over 50 years.
Anna Green Gables.
Anna Green
Yeah,
Gables.
it's built that, right?
People come from all over the world.
That's
Like,
right.
it's like hordes of people from Japan and other it's a destination in the same way that the West End is a destination, the same way that people go to Broadway. Like there's a real potential and opportunity, I think. And
I love what you're doing. I think, look, I've had a year here in Cape Breton, and it gave me time to really be here. I come every year. I was like when you were a kid.
Sure.
I'm just drawn to this place, and my family, my sister and 3 brothers are all here, and I just love it. But it also made me see what's happening here. There's growth happening on this island. There are people coming here to live. They need to be entertained. They need this wonderful service that you are offering, this wonderful theater production, this wonderful institution that you're building. And I just think, you know, the Neptune is in Halifax, but I think the hat has even a broader audience than because of what you're doing and the creativity that you have built into this place.
I think as we started this conversation with, there's something about having so few resources and just the passion and desire, and everyone loves an underdog, certainly, but there's a lot of heart, and there's a lot of, I mean, you know, certainly entertainment is a big part of how I stay sane myself, but I think more than that, people need a gathering place.
do.
And I mean, it's funny that we're in a church because
Yeah.
for centuries, church was the place that once a week, everybody in your community would come together and you'd sing and you'd tell stories and you'd hug each other and you'd get to have this community. And communion, it comes from community, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's something that in this digital age and where, you know, it's more and more secular and people are going away from those sorts of gathering points, I think we long for that human connection and being able to come with 400 strangers, see a story, laugh, cry, be moved, think of your own experiences and know that it's the same whether you're a CEO or a janitor. That's,
Yeah.
you know, it's cliche, but it's essential. It really is something that I think needs to exist in a
Yeah.
community, and if we get to provide that, that's
And
amazing.
particularly now.
Yeah, especially now.
Especially
Well,
now.
absolutely.
Especially now.
after
And-
isolation.
Yeah,
Like, oh my
yeah.
goodness.
But always, it's important. And I am a big
absolutely.
fan. I've always been a big fan of the arts and entertainment. And
Yeah.
and I've watched you. I watched you grow. I remember the first
Yeah.
little letter that you sent me. It must have been 2015. And-
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
probably.
and it was such a wonderful letter. It was so passionate. It was so inspiring.
That's so
And
kind.
what you've built here is amazing. It really is. You should be so proud. We need to upgrade the bathrooms. okay?
Yes, we
And-
do need
and we
bathrooms.
have to do.
We need a lobby.
We need a lobby, and we
Yeah.
need some things here. But
Yeah.
I am sure you're going to accomplish this because it is important for this community. It
Yeah.
is central to this community. You're a gem, and you've built a gem in downtown Sydney,
That's
and
right.
we are so lucky to have you be part of this. So,
Well,
thank
I'm
you
lucky
so
to be
much,
here. Thank you,
Wesley.
Lynette. Thank you for everything.
Terrific talking with
It's
you.
such a treat. I'm so glad to have the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.